Shalom Aleichem and welcome everyone as we have the opportunity to once again prepare together for Shabbat, this week being Shabbat Parashat Yitro, and what a jam-packed parsha. We know this parsha has the 10 Commandments and many other things that go on in this parasha. So let's start from the beginning. So right in the beginning of the parasha, it says, V'ishma Yitro, and Yitro heard. First thing, who is Yitro? Yitro, we know, he is the father-in-law of Moshe Rabbeinu. Okay, he's the father-in-law of Moshe Rabbeinu. He's the father-in-law of Moshe Rabbeinu. Who else is he the father-in-law of? Elazar ben Aharon Kohen Gadol, right? So Elazar, he's also the father of Elazar. He's also... Right, they're brother-in-laws. He's also the grandfather of Pinchas, who Pinchas is Eliyahu Navi.
When did Elazar have time to get married to her?
Elazar married a daughter of Yitro.
When they had a chance to meet.
Well, I guess when they came, I guess.
This is after Matan Torah already, he got married?
It's a good question, I don't know. Anyone know?
It can be before, because they're all in Egypt still.
Can it be in Mitzrayim?
I don't know. I'm not sure. But that's what it is. It is. How, the exact circumstances, I don't know. It's just they are brother-in-laws, Elazar and Moshe Rabbeinu. And so Yitro is the father-in-law of Elazar, father of Moshe Rabbeinu. He's the grandfather of Pinchas. It means he's the grandfather of Eliyahu Navi. So he has a lot of yichus. He has a lot of connections. You know, maybe that's why they named the parasha Yitro, but I don't know about that, because you have Yosef HaTzadik. Nobody named the parasha Yosef. Right? Maybe we should, but it wasn't. There's no parasha Aharon HaKohen. Here, we have to deal with Bilam later. But Yitro, we have a parsha called Yitro. We have to understand, what is Yitro, and why is the parsha called Yitro? And this is the parsha about
truth.
Aseret HaDibraot. Yes, you're right. Ot Emet. We'll deal with that B'ezrat Hashem Shabbat morning. But at this point, we have to understand why this parsha, the parsha about Matan Torah, is the parsha called Yitro. So the pasuk tells us right in the beginning, Vayishma Yitro. Yitro heard. Harav Shlomo Wolbe Zecher Tzadik L'Bracha says, the reason why this parasha is called Parashat Yitro, to teach us two prerequisites, two important things that people need to know in order to be able to learn Torah. The first thing, he says, the first thing is Vayishma Yitro. Yitro heard. Well, Yitro is the only one who heard. It says in Azir, everybody heard. Everybody heard about the Kriyat Yam Suf, the splitting of the mirror. Everyone heard. So Vayishma Yitro, what is it? He says there's two types of hearing. There's the hearing that a lot of people do. He goes, if you're lucky, he goes in the ear, out. Some people doesn't even go in. You know, it just hits around the ear and doesn't even go in. And some it goes in, one ear comes out the same ear. Someone it goes in one ear, comes out through the other ear, depending on your level of just listening. But there's also, when HaKadosh Baruch Hu comes to Shlomo HaMelech asks Hashem to have what's called a lev shomea, a listening heart. Right? If you're ever in the airport in Israel and they make announcements, how do they start the announcement? Simu lev. What does that mean?
Pay attention.
What does it actually mean?
Put your heart to it.
Put your hearts to it, right? Simu lev. You have to actually pay attention with your heart, not just your ears. That's what Shlomo Melech asks Hashem for. He says, I want a lev shomea. I want a heart that's able to hear, right? And that was Yitro. You know, the Midrash tells us, if a person falls from he's on the third floor and he falls down, he breaks bones, right? How do you patch him up? The doctor's going to see what bone broke and he's going to patch it up. But the Midrash says, when it comes to Hashem, and someone, Has Shalom, does Averot, and Hashem wants to patch him up, how does he patch him up? He patches them up with his ears. If he listens to Hashem, all of a sudden, everything gets better. All the Averot go out, everything becomes mitzvot, it becomes Hozeh B'Tshuvah. All you need is a good listening ear. And this was Yitro. Yitro was able to hear and really listen and put his heart to it. I saw, as I was preparing for the class, An interesting story shared by Rabbi Tawil from London. He shares a story about this banker. There was a Jewish banker, and he was in charge of all the lending in town. He lended out all the money. And he charged 12% a year, 1% per month. So he took out the loan, it was a 12% interest for the year. And he would use the heter iska, he would use the proper documents, halachically able to give out the loan, and so he did it. And for many years he had it at 12%. And one year he decided to go up every month by 0.5% for a total of 18% a year. And he told all his customers, this is very good for you. 18 is high, life. This is what you want, life. It's going to be 18% a year interest. So everybody told him, what are you doing? What are you doing? We only make, when we borrow from you money, if we're lucky, we make 30% back in our business. If we have to give you 18%, what are we left with? We're left with minimum, nothing. He says, they tell him it's not right. And he doesn't budge. He says, 18%, this is what I want. So the people go to the rabbi of the town, and they tell the rabbi, listen, you got to talk to him. He's taking an arm and a leg. 18%, that's too much. And the rabbi tells them, listen, I really have no influence on him. I can't really get him. But let me come up with a plan. Let me figure out how I can talk to him. Not too long later, one of the richest men in the town died. And so now they had the levaya, and they had the hespedim, they had the eulogies. And the rabbi had to speak. He gets up and he sees that man who's lending the money for 18%, he's in the crowd. And he says, you know what? This is the time. So he gets up and he starts to speak. This man who died, what a tzaddik, what a great guy. And he was one of the richest men. You should know he gave all his money to tzedakah. He always gave. You should know people come into the world and their hands are closed because they think they're going to grab. Then they die, their hands are open because nothing's able to take with them to the next world. You have to give. What do you have? Don't go crazy by money. Don't try to keep it. Give it. And he gave a speech, and he was looking, and he sees this lender shaking his head, just, shaking. So he, after the speeches and everything, this bank lender walks over to the rabbi and says, Rabbi, I know you for 30 years. 30 years I know you. You never gave such a good speech as you gave today. It's going to make a revolution. It's going to change everybody. So the rabbi is a little happy. Oh, Baruch Hashem, he heard something. So he says, what revolution it's going to be? So the banker says to him, this lender says, listen, recently I increased the interest rate to 18% a year. And everybody's complaining. Now I'm going to tell them, did you hear what the rabbi said? Anyway, you're not going to go with your money, so pay me. Right? Some people can hear it, and instead of hearing it for themselves, right, they hear it the other way around. It's very interesting, selective hearing how people hear things. Rapam similarly said the same story about his father. His father was a Rav, and the father wanted to give somebody musar, but he was doing something wrong. So he didn't want to give it to him straight. So he gave it to him in a drasha in the shul. He gave a speech. The guy was there. And afterwards, that guy came over and said, the rabbi said to the Rapam's father, oh, you told everybody off. You did a great job. Meanwhile, to himself, he never applied it. Or Shlomo Wolbe, he was giving once a Musar Shmuz in Elul, telling people how you have to change and make tshuva. And he ended off the Musar. He said, I want to end off with a very important last statement. Everything I said, I meant you, and I meant you, and I meant you. And he went around the whole room pointing at everybody and telling them, I meant all of you. This way no one should leave the room thinking that it wasn't about him. Because that's the way people are. They hear it and it bounces off them. The guy's talking about somebody else. Right? This is famous mashal. We said many times that there was a rabbi. He came up on Yom Kippur and he was trying to make people to have tshuva, to make tshuva. And he was telling everybody, if you don't change, you're going to go to Gehenna, and this is going to happen, that going to happen. Everybody in the shul, everybody from this town, and one guy in the back was smiling the whole time. He gave another speech. Again, this guy was smiling. Every time he's saying, everyone's going to die. So, at the end of Yom Kippur, this rabbi walks over and says, I don't understand. The whole time I'm scaring everybody, and you're smiling. He says to him, Rabbi, every time you spoke, you said the people of this town, the people of this community. I'm not from here. I'm actually just traveling. I ended up in here for Yom Kippur, so you're not talking about me. That's what people do. But not Yitro. Yitro, when he heard, he put his heart to it. He listened. He actually took it to be himself. Once, someone walked over to Rabbi Levin. Rabbi Levin, the tzaddik of Yerushalayim. He used to give speeches. And the woman used to come to the classes as well. So one of the women after class came to Rabbi Levin and said, listen, my husband really needs some education on Shalom Bayit, how to talk to his wife and stuff like that. Can you please, in one of your shiurim, talk about it? So Rabbi Levin said, okay, Be'ez Hashem. One of the nights her husband came, and he said he's going to speak. And he started speaking about it. And after the class, the great tzaddik, Rav Isser Zalman Meltzer, who was in the class, came over to Rabbi Levin and said, Rabbi Levin, I knew that you were talking about me. Now, Rabbi Levin wasn't even talking about him, he was talking about somebody else. And this great tzaddik, this great gaon, this gadol walks over and told Rabbi Levin, thank you for talking to me about this, because I know I'm so busy in Torah and giving classes and it's kind of all these different things that I might have forgotten about my wife. And I understood that you were talking to me. Thank you for talking about this topic to me. That's the difference between a tzaddik and not a tzaddik. Right? Tzaddik says, you're talking? The message is for me. The other guy, you're talking to everyone else. So this is Yitro. Yitro is this tzaddik. Yitro is able to say that this is for me. The second prerequisite, so that's one idea, one lesson of Yitro, Veishma Yitro. But now there's a second. Rav Shlomo Wolbe says, what's the second prerequisite in order to learn Torah? He says the second is, what happened after Yitro heard it? Did he hear it and just stay here? And just, very nice, I hear it, I paid attention to it? Or did Yitro hear it and he went and he joined the Jewish people? That's a very different approach. Rav Sheinbaum, Shlito, Avram Lev Sheinbaum, he says, B'Shem Rav Motel Katz, the Chassidik Bracha, he was a Rosh Yeshiva in Telsh, and the Rosh Yeshiva said as follows, you want to know the difference between a simple person and a great person? The definition of greatness is somebody who can take his knowledge and put it into his character, to actually do something about it. Another person, the simple person, he knows things, but he cannot put it into practice. You want to know who's a gadol? You want to know who's a gibor? It's someone who takes what he knows and to put it into practice. And when do you put it into practice? We have a famous Igeret Ramban, right? And what does Igeret Ramban tell us? He's talking to his children, and he says over there, "V'cha'asher takum min hasefer." When you get up from your learning, from your sefer, whatever you were learning, techapes ba'asher lamata. Look into what you were learning. Im yesh bo davar asher tuchal lekayamo. It's something that you can apply into your life. When do you do this? As soon as you get up from your learning. Not later. Not tomorrow. As soon as you get up from your learning. As soon as Yitro heard it, he packed his bags and went. All right? He didn't stop and say, it's okay, I'll take 2 weeks, I'll go, whatever. Immediately, he got up and he did something about it. You can imagine, a guy builds a factory, right? He builds a factory, he's going to be making clothing and something like that. And he has the textile and everything's going through and he can build, he make a lot of stuff, he buys everything. And the machine is just sitting there. It's not plugged in. Nobody plugged it in. Is it worth anything? No! You build a whole factory. You have all the machines. You have all the material. But if you don't plug it in, you get nothing. You have all this intelligence. You have all this information. You have all this divrei chazal. You have all these ma'amarot. You have all these great things. But if you don't plug it into your life, you don't incorporate it into what you do, you don't get up from your learning and say, how can I apply this to my life? You did absolutely nothing. Tonight is the yahrzeit of who? Harav Yisrael Belsky, Zechat Tzedek V'Bracha. The Rosh Yeshiva of Torah V'Dat. You want to see a man who took something and applied it to his life? That was the Rav Belsky. Rav Belsky, he's very involved in kashrut. He would answer tons of questions for the OU. And stories and stories about him, how he would go to the factories, jump into their big vats where they make things to see what the process is, how the fire goes on, how the fire goes off, what's the ingredients, and he would do all sorts of investigation. He was so involved in everything, and he applied all his knowledge to it. And you can walk outside with him. He would do it in the camps. He would walk outside with the Bachrim, and he would give a class in botany, which tree was what leaf is what, how it grows, what it does. I remember as a student in Torah Vedat, we once went on a Shabbaton. At that time, it was called Camp Ne'arim. And we went to Camp Ne'arim, and it was a Friday night. And we all were out. So it was a Friday night, or Saturday night. I don't remember if it was Shabbat or what. And I remember that Rebelsky came out, and he was looking up in the sky, and he was telling us, all the mazalot and all these things, all the astronomy, the Torah astronomy. He was explaining it to us. As a young boy in 9th grade, I didn't understand anything. But that's Rebelsky. He was able to apply. Once, Rebelsky says, once he finished Erev Rosh Hashanah Selichot. Now we know by Sfaradim we say every day pretty much the same Selichot. It's usually about, depending who's a Hazan, you can go anywhere between 35 to 45 to an hour, depending how long you stretch it, what you say exactly. But by the Ashkenazim, Erev Rosh Hashanah, they have like a 2-hour Selichot. They have a very, very, very long. Every day they have a little bit different. So they have a very different. And that day, after 2 hours of Selichot, Rebelsky says he was leaving the minyan, and he sees 2 people walking out. And one guy turns to the other guy and tells him, what about the economy? What do you think is going to happen to the economy? So the other guy says to him, listen, I don't want to talk about these things right now. It's Erev Rosh Hashanah. He says, I'm not talking to you about, I'm talking about the economy. I just want to know what's your idea. And the man says, I'm getting involved with Rosh Hashanah. Don't ask these questions. He says, it's just the economy. What are you going crazy about? I just want to know what your thoughts. He said, leave it to Hashem. So this other man says, leave it to Hashem. Hashem takes care of the big problems. So this man says, what are you talking about? Rosh Hashanah. Hashem's in charge of everything. Rebelsky says, here are 2 people walked into Selichot, and 2 people left. And one person left ready for Rosh Hashanah, and the other person is still talking about everything that goes on in the world. Right? That's people. Do we take what we heard and incorporate it? Or do we take what we heard and we forget about it? How do we deal with it? How do we go with it? Now everybody knows about the great tzaddik, a great Gaon by the name of Rav Chatzkel Levenstein. Right? Chatzkel Levenstein, one of the greatest influences of his generation. Does anyone know how he became Rav Chatzkel Levenstein? The story goes that as a youth, he did not learn a lot of Torah. And he worked as a delivery boy. He was an orphan. He had no parents. And he worked as a delivery boy. One Friday, after he got his payment, he went to the mikvah. He goes to the mikvah. He comes out of the mikvah. And his money that he left in his pockets is no longer there. It's gone. Someone stole it. Rav Chatzkel says, at that time I told myself, if a person can work and lose all his money, what's the point? I'm going to dedicate my life for Torah. And at that moment he changed. He stopped working. He took the message that Hashem sent him and he changed it immediately. Right? Everyone knows about Sarah Schneer. Sarah Schneer, the founder of the Bet Yaakov movement. Does anybody know how it started? The story goes that she was once, during World War I, Shabbat Hanukkah, she was in Vienna. And there was a Rav in Vienna, and the Rav was saying, I know how important it is to educate the boys, but my concern is who's going to educate the girls. They also need yeshivot. They also need places to learn. She was in the Ezrat Nashim, she was in the ladies section, she heard this, and she took it to heart, and she immediately went to work to create the Bet Yaakov movement that we have today. Without a Bet Yaakov movement today, one can safely say there would not be Judaism the way it is today. How did it happen? Because she heard it, and she did something about it. Says Rav Wolbe. The Torah places Yitro as the name of the Parashat, and the Parashat of Matan Torah to tell us what? In order to get the Torah, you have to have these two traits. You have to have the trait to actually hear it and apply it and put it into your heart. Really listen to it. Don't just bounce it off. And at the same time, to put it into practice. Not just to hear it and tomorrow, but to actually put it into practice. You know, Harav Galinsky, Tzaddik L'Bracha, he says on this week's Parashat a very interesting idea that's closely related to this. We have in this week's Parashat, it says, Moshe ta'am lekata Elohim. Moshe brought the people toward Hashem. Vayityatzvu b'tachtit hahar. And they were standing at the bottom of the mountain. The Gemara, Shabbat, and Gemara, Avodah Zarah says, what does this mean? That Hashem took a mountain. And Hashem said, if you don't accept the Torah, Sham tiyeh kiburatchem. There will be your grave. Now Rav Galinsky says, 1 second. Here, it should say. It says Sham. It should say Po tiyeh kiburatchem. Here should be your grave. If you don't accept the Torah, I will kill you now. Sham. So Galinsky says, you want to know where the grave is? That's the grave. Sham itself. When a person says, there, I can't learn here. I got to learn downstairs. Or I can't learn upstairs. I got to learn here. Or I can't learn from that rabbi. I'll have to go there. Or if someone keeps saying there, then that's going to be his end. Because there's always another there. Right? You can always say, I'll learn tomorrow. And always you can say, I'll go there. Shalom Aleichem, Gabriel. So someone can always say, I'll go there. I'll go here. I can't learn right now. Sham tiyeh kvuratchem. There is going to be your burial. If a person says, there I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it later, that's the end of him. A person has to learn how to say, now I'm going to do it. I'm going to do this now. He says, over here, Galinsky says, there's a certain bird that it has a bad smell to it. There's a bad smell to it. So this bird was very sensitive and he has this bad smell. So he decides, you know what, maybe I'm smelly over here. So he goes and he builds his nest somewhere else. He goes and builds his nest somewhere else. What happens? It's still smelly because it smells on him. He says, you know what, this place, I'm going to go different. I'm going to go on a roof. He builds his nest on a roof and it still smells. Right? He decides, you know what, I'm going to fly away to a very far away place. So one of his friends told him, where are you going? He says, I want to go somewhere where it smells nice. And his friend tells this bird, no matter where you go, you're always going to smell bad. Because you smell bad. Right? If you keep bringing your averot with you, and you keep saying, I'm going to go there, and you're never changing right now, that bad smell is going to keep going with you. Listen to Rav Yisrael Salanter, Tzaddik L'Bracha says, Adam, a person shouldn't say, Et asher asah Elohim ein lishanot. However Hashem made me, I can't change it. He says, don't say that. The truth is, a person has the ability to conquer and change. And he says, for proof, Rav Salanter says, go to the circus. They took a lion and they tamed him. Rav Salanter says, if you can tame a lion, then you can change a human. You just have to want to do it now. But what happens? I'll change tomorrow. The rabbi said I should get up early. Okay. Next week we'll start. And by the time we start next week, you already forgot everything. Rav Chaim Shmulevitz, he said over a story, there was a boy in yeshiva in Volozhin. This boy was very, very smart. He was a great masmid. And once he went to lunch, and he was eating lunch, and someone asked him a question. And he thought he knew the answer. They took out the Gemara and they checked, and he made a mistake. The answer was somewhere else, and not where he thought it was. So what did this Talmud do? This Talmud got up, middle of lunch, went to a Beit Midrash, and stayed in that Beit Midrash for 7 years. And didn't leave until he knew enough Torah to walk out. And at that time, someone asked Rav Chaim Shmulevitz's father, he says, did this boy do right? He was in the middle of lunch. He ate bread, he said Hamotzi, and he never said Birkat HaMazon, and he ran out. And Rafael Alter Shmulevitz, Rav Chaim Shmulevitz's father, said, the fact that he left and he didn't say Birkat HaMazon, that was halachically incorrect. You can't leave. If you ate bread, you have to say Birkat HaMazon. But if he would have stayed and not run to the Beit Midrash, he would never stay for 7 years and become the Gaon he became. Because when you hear something, you have to use it immediately. That was Yitro. That's what the Gemara says. If you're going to say Sham Tieh Kvuratchem, right? If you say there, that's going to be your Kvuram. If you keep saying later, 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 that's too long. Someone once came to the Hafetz Chaim, and he told the Hafetz Chaim, I'm getting on in my life. In a few years I might die. I have 6 children. I made a will. Tzava, I wrote out a will. I'm going to split my assets into 7. 6 portions to my children, and 1 portion to the yeshiva. I'm asking you, the Hafetz Chaim, when I pass away, please learn for me, daven for me, learn Mishnayot for me. So he thought the Hafetz Chaim was going to say, great idea, very nice, right? The Hafetz Chaim tells him, first of all, I don't understand you. Why are you waiting till you die? Give the money, 1/7 now to the yeshiva, and start learning now for yourself. Learn Mishnayot now, yourself. Tehillim for yourself. So when you get up to Shemaim, you have something with you. Yeah, Sham, I'm going to take care of it later. If he wants other people to do it for them. Right? I heard Rav Moshe Meir Weiss would say that his grandfather would, his great-grandfather bought his plot in the Kvura, he brought his gravesite, and he used to go there every day and read Tehillim. Someone asked him, what are you doing? He says, I'm preparing my Tehillim for when I die. I'm saying it here at my place. Someone who's doing it now. He's not waiting for later. Rav Galinsky says that when he was in the Novodok Yeshiva in Bialystok, he went to learn Musar. He wanted to go into a private Beit Midrash and nobody was there. So he knew there was one of the shuls in the city that had a minyan and no one was there during the day. And he goes and he wants to learn Musar. And as he's there, he hears from the Ezat Nashim, from the ladies section, someone saying these words. Amr Lishmuel Rav Yehuda, Shinena Hatov, 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 Hatov ve'echo, Hatov ushtet, Da'almad azlina mine kihulala dami. He says, hurry, 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 hurry and eat, hurry and drink. For the world from which we must depart, the world that we're going from, is like a wedding hall. How long does the wedding last? Right, Hatan and Kala, they spent so many months getting ready for the wedding, and then the wedding is over in a couple of hours. It's all over. You don't even know what happened. Most people don't even know what happened. It's like it comes and goes. That's the world. You come in, you have what, 70 years if you're lucky, 80 years, 90 years, 120, Alavai. But it goes so fast. And who was this man who was saying this? It was the Stipler Gaon. He was singing this in the Beit Midrash. Shlomo Shadron, Zecher Tzadik Lebracha, says he once was in a Beit Midrash all alone with Rav Eli Lapian. And he tells Rav Eli Lapian, he walks up to Rav Eli and he says, excuse me, I know it's just me and you here, but can you please give me a Musar Shmuz? I want to hear Musar from you. I want to hear some ethics. So Rav Eli Lapian says, even though it's just me and you, bring me a shtender. I'm going to do it the right way. They brought him a shtender. Rav Eli Lapian stands up, grabs the sender with both hands, and looks at Shalom Shadron and says to him, if I had a black beard like you right now, I would make sure to seize every moment that remains to me. V'zehu. He sat down and that was the end of the Musar Shmuz. But that's such an important Musar. Don't push it off. Don't push it off. Everyone has great and grand ideas of how they can contribute to Klal Yisrael, how they can do something for the Torah. But I'm talking to myself right now, but all the Yetzer Hara says, you know what? I'll tell you my own thing. I feel like I can share it. Every Shabbat morning I give a nice speech. And usually I synthesize a lot of different things that I learned throughout the week and I put it together and I work hard to find the story and stuff like that to make it something that's interesting that you can take it back to the family. And every Motzei Shabbat, I say, you know what? I'm going to type it up. I'll put it all together, so I'll have it, and maybe I can make a sefer at the end. And every Motzei Shabbat that I fail, the Yetzer Hara gives me another excuse why. Hey, you don't have time this week? You'll start next week. Oh, holy, it's almost 1.5 years passed and I've not typed it up once. Maybe after telling you this, maybe I'll do it. Maybe someone will text me after Shabbat and say that you type it up. Maybe give me a little incentive. But this is the truth. The Yetzer Hara always pushes you up next week. Hey, week after. And then it comes 70, 80 years, and where are you? And this is the second lesson that we're learning this week's Parashat. I want to move on to one more very important lesson that we learned from this week's Parashat. I remember once I wanted to go learn, and I went to learn in Borough Park in one of the base medrashim there, one of the Beit Midrash, quietly, in one of the rooms on the side. I went into the room and I started learning by myself. And all of a sudden someone else walks in, sits down right near me, takes out a bag of potato chips, opens the chips, and starts. You can imagine, I wanted to learn quietly, peacefully. There's so much noise. So I start getting very upset with him. And I want to say something, but I held myself back. A minute later, this guy turns to me and says, "Oh, Rabbi Shimonov, I listen to your speeches all the time. I love it. You're such good, important things to say. I love it." All of a sudden, I don't hear the crunching. I don't hear the potato chips. All of a sudden, I love this guy. He's my best friend. Everything he does doesn't bother me. You know? You think about this for a moment. You go on a bus or on a plane, right? And a parent comes with a little child, and the child makes the noise. And everyone gets tired. Screaming. But imagine 1 second it's your child. What would you do? You wouldn't be that upset. You try to hush them, this, that. You would even give a candy to the kid. You wouldn't scream, yell, and be all upset. You know, sometimes you come to shul, and someone's sitting in your seat, right? So all of a sudden you get upset. Why are you getting upset? Some people I've met, certain shuls they don't go to. The rabbi they don't like, the gabbai they don't like, or someone in the shul bothering them. They don't really know this guy. Then one day, they end up on a bus stop or somewhere together, at a wedding or this, and they start talking. And then they realize, we actually like each other. We're good people. We can actually get along. But up until then, they didn't see. They didn't see eye to eye.
Then it is just like when it comes to kashrut.
Sometimes someone is praying in shul and they're praying a little loud. And someone gets upset at that. Why is he praying so loud? Now imagine for a second it's your child or your father, or maybe someone who didn't come to shul for a very long time and you're happy he finally came. All of a sudden his singing doesn't bother you. Right? If you really love someone. Okay, so we're in the middle of our third lesson, where so far we've seen example after example of how sometimes people who bother us, all of a sudden when we get to know them, all of a sudden it doesn't bother us. Sometimes you see it in reverse also. Where you see it in reverse? You see it in dating. Dating. You could date a girl that you're going to marry, right? All of a sudden when you're dating, everything she does is amazing. It's all great. Wow! You're inspired by everything he or she does. But then once you get married, all of a sudden, sometimes, this what you liked, starts to bother you, right? Why? Because now you're starting to take her for granted. You're not loving her as much as you did earlier. Whether it was love before, or infatuation, whatever that story was, but you were, they say, love conquers all, right? What that means is that if you really love somebody, their flaws don't bother you. Their problems that they do, the things that might bother you, won't bother you if you really love them. What happened when the Jews came to the mountain to get the Torah? It says, Vayichad Sham Yisrael. Why does it say it in singular form? To tell us there were Everybody had one heart. The Midrash says, when that happened, when they were Ke'ish Echad B'Lev Echad, Hashem said, now it's time to give the Torah. Because they have one heart, now it's time to give Torah. Why? Why can't you give Torah to 600,000 Jews? Why does it have to be them all being one in order to get Torah? Give it to 600,000 people. So, here he gives the Eitz HaChaim, he gives a mashal. He says, imagine there's a company, and there's a CEO, and they're building buses. So he tells everybody, you're going to do this part, 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 and he gives everybody a job. But what's the idea for the job? For them to do it on their own, or for them to build the bus? To build the bus. He says the reason Hashem gave it to them as one, because Hashem wants us to serve Hashem. Not just for us to do mitzvot, but rather for us to do the Ratzon Hashem. And how do you do the Ratzon Hashem? By doing what Hashem wants, not what you want. Imagine someone walks in and says, I don't want to put the screw in here. I want to put it here. You got to do Hashem's Ratzon to get it done right. And everybody has their own mission. Everybody has their own mission of what they can do. By the way, this week's Parashat you also have not being jealous. Chacham Ben Zion Abba Shaul says, what's an idea how you can use in your mind not to get jealous of somebody? To understand everybody has their own mission. This guy has his mission. That's why he has these qualities, talents, and traits. And that guy has a different mission. And that's why he has these quality traits and characteristics and this family and that. Because everybody has their own mission to fulfill in Judaism. Once we were giving a speech, actually somewhere here in the community, was making Chanukat Bayit, and I was invited, and I had to leave early because I had to go to work. So they asked me to speak, where there were other Chashav Rabbanim there at the time, and I didn't want to speak first. It's not proper for me. There's other Chashav Rabbanim there to speak. So I said, it's okay, I won't speak. I'll speak later because there are other people there. And one of the Rabbanim said there, he says, we're all here to talk Torah. You talk first, I talk first, doesn't make a difference. We're all here to do Hashem's job, which is Hashem sent us to teach Torah. So it doesn't make a difference who speaks first. Now you still have to have kavod for the Chachamim, but they can say that. And that's the truth. Everybody's doing it, but there's more than that. There's more than that. Not just we're all doing the Ratzon Hashem. It's also to tell us to have derech eretz to one another. Why? If Hashem gave Torah to 600,000 people separately, then what would I say? I have my mitzvah, I don't care about you. I gotta pray mincha, I'll double park, I'll park in your driveway and I'll block you out, because I gotta do my mitzvah. But now, there's not my mitzvah. There's a Klal Yisrael. There's a whole nation. And we're all involved. Just to give you an idea, the Chazon Ish was making a minyan, and it was scheduled for a certain time, and it was, unfortunately, some people came a little late, and they're about to start Ashrei, and one of the people said, Rabbi, I can't stay, or maybe I could, I don't know, tell me what's the halacha. I made an appointment with a friend of mine to meet him in 15 minutes. If we're going to pray mincha, I'm never going to make it there on time. What did the Chazon Ish say to do? Go. Why? Because it's a Klal Yisrael. You can't think only about yourself. There's a whole Klal. There's a whole nation. You can't just think about yourself. That's why the Torah was given when there was Ahdut. When there was Ke'ish Echad B'Lev Echad. It's not just you. That's why you'll see. I'm talking about Rav Belsky again. This is your side tonight. Tonight, Rav Belsky, he wrote very few Sfarim. The Gaon that he is, he didn't write a lot. Why? Because he was involved with the Klal. He was involved with Klal, so he was getting involved in helping people. He could have wrote many Sfarim, but he was involved with helping people. There's a nation